Hi, I'm Chet Marchwinski, Communications Director at the nonprofit Lean Enterprise Institute. And today my guest is Mei Chang. She is the Director of Lean Impact at the Lean Startup Company and the former Chief Innovation Officer and an Executive Director at USAID, one of the largest funders of international development. Before her pivot to social good, she was an experienced Silicon Valley executive with more than 20 years at leading companies, including Google, Apple, Intuit, and several startups. She is the author of the new book, Lean Impact, How to Innovate for Radically Greater Social Good. Anne, thanks a lot for coming in and telling us about Lean Impact.
Thanks so much for having me today.
So, insanely great was the term Steve Jobs used when talking about Apple products. Is it fair to say you want to create insanely great social impact?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we already take it for granted that companies are going to aim to maximize their profits, maximize their shareholder value, and everybody works relentlessly to try to get there. I think we need to apply that same spirit to social impact, that it's not enough for us to deliver some impact and do some good, but we really should do everything possible to deliver the greatest impact at the greatest scale, because the scope of the needs that exist in the world are really extensive.
That's a good point. So what's the difference between the approach described in Lean Impact and the way mission-driven organizations such as nonprofits, foundations, philanthropies operate traditionally?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference is that for a number of reasons, organizations in the social sector have a difficult time taking risks. The tendency is to plan their programs in excruciating detail in advance, in a grant proposal or otherwise, and then execute to that plan. And that works when you have a solution that really works and is able to scale and meet the needs that exist in the world. But for most of the things we're trying to tackle in the social sector, that's just not really the case. We have a lot of unanswered questions. Our solutions are often insufficient. And so in that realm, we need to figure out how to take much greater risks, and then that means experimenting, trying a lot of different things, learning from that, and being able to iterate very quickly and learn as quickly as possible to get to the solutions that really will meet the needs that exist.
Okay, so sticking with that point, you draw inspiration from the Lean Startup movement and the scientific method of build, measure, learn. Can you explain how these and other concepts are synthesized in the book?
Yeah, so Lean Startup and Lean Impact are not just a fad. They really are rooted in the fundamentals of the scientific method. And the idea is that when we have a potential solution that we believe will solve a problem, that we form a hypothesis about what we think will happen. And then the build, measure, learn feedback loop is simply that we build an experiment, something Eric calls a MVP, or minimum viable product. That's the smallest, cheapest possible experiment that will help you learn about your hypothesis. And then we measure, gather data to see what happened, and then we learn. And if we discover that our solution worked, then maybe it's safe to double down. And if we discover that it didn't work, we can learn about whether there might be ways we can tweak it to work better, or whether we're maybe off track altogether and need to pivot and take a different course. And so the key here is, certainly all organizations go through this build, measure, learn feedback loop, but the key is how fast we can go through that loop. I think a lot of mission-driven organizations tend to do pilots and gather data and learn on the order of months or years. And what we want to do is really reduce that down to days or weeks, because when we can learn faster, we can make much faster progress.
And how about, can you share some results about the impact, the accelerated impact that approach is having?
Absolutely. So I interviewed organizations, both nonprofit and for-profit, small and big, domestic and international, from across all different sectors. And what I've really seen is that when organizations are able to break out of the planning and doing mentality and really start taking on experimental mentality, they're able to dramatically increase their impact. That can be both the effectiveness of their solutions, organizations like Summit Public Schools that iterated and improved on their approach to personalized learning to deliver dramatically better results in terms of college graduation rates, to an organization in South Africa called Harambee Youth Accelerator that's working on youth employment issues and tackling the scourge of youth unemployment and iterating their way to figure out how to reach over 50,000 youth and get them to find their first formal sector job.
That's an inspiring story. And May, thanks for coming in, telling us about it.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you for watching. By the way, if you volunteer at, donate to nonprofits, or involved with them in any way, go to leanimpact.org. That's leanimpact.org to learn more about making positive social change at scale. And you can get a copy of Lean Impact at Amazon or other booksellers.